So yesterday, we reviewed Nightmare on Elm Street 3, which was one of my personal favourites in the entire franchise. And its sequel, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, is still to this day the biggest movie in the series, grossing a near 50 million at the box office. So with the highest takings out of all of the solo Elm Street films, this one must be the best, right? No! Not at all. Elm Street 4 is where the franchise starts to fall off for me. It's not that it's bad, a lot of it is actually pretty good. There's even the odd series high point here and there. It's just that there's quite a bit of it that's pretty scattered and weird. I've heard people criticise 3 before as being nothing more than a vehicle to take us from one gory set piece to the next, but I personally think that criticism is a lot more applicable to the 4th entry onwards. For me, Elm Street 4 marks the end of Freddy's reign at the top. Obviously, he's still top of the box office, but this is where the declining quality begins to set in. Again, it's not consistently bad, it just has some occasionally very questionable creative choices, and overall, it's a pretty significant step down from what we're used to at this point. Though I will say, it has its moments. Namely, one of its better qualities is its direction. Often dubbed the MTV Nightmare movie, Elm Street 4 employed a kind of poppy, fast-cutting, crazy, in-your-face aesthetic. There's a lot of cool, chaotic, over-the-top pop horror shit going on in the movie, and it's got the energy and tone to match, partly in thanks to director Renny Harlin, whose previous work consisted of only 2 low-budget efforts. Finnish film Born American, starring Chuck Norris's son, and 1987's Prison, starring one Kane Hodder, who you'll be hearing a lot about later in this show. Harlin, who according to New Line Cinema's CEO at the time, Bob Shea, was living out of baked bean cans in a single room in Hollywood with a friend when he got the job, acquired the career-defining position in an extremely unorthodox manner. New Line were looking at all sorts of directors, and Harlin initially wasn't even on the radar. He came in for an interview when they were going through potentials, and was quickly shown the door. Instead of taking it on the chin though, Harlin just kept going back unannounced. Each time, according to Bob and executive producer Sarah Risher, looking dirtier and more disheveled than the last. At one point, Sarah says she even thought to herself, I'm gonna have to give this dude a job just so he can get a bath. And eventually, the persistence of the Finnish fella wore down Bob, who relented and gave him the gig. Something he wouldn't be happy with as a decision until the film was actually finished, with Harlan suggesting that his entire relationship with Bob throughout production mostly consisted of Bob coming to set and scowling at what he thought was a huge mistake. A mistake that would of course go on to make $50 million. So you know, there's worse slip-ups to have. Side note by the way, before Harlan got the job, it was offered to Tom McLaughlin of Friday the 13th 6 fame, and my god! Would I have loved to see his Freddy film. You want to know the reason Tom had turned it down though? Because they wouldn't allow him creative control, as they had, get this, already started shooting without a director. In an interview with Midnight's Edge, Tom stated, when I finished Friday, I was offered Nightmare 4, and I went to New Line, met with them, and I said, I love Freddy. I would love to do one of these. But I really want to do what I just did, where I had creative control. And they go, well, we're already shooting. What? Yeah, we're already shooting. We're shooting like 2 different units for the visual effects and something else, puppets or something. And I said, without a director? Yeah, we kind of know how we're going to make these things. And I went, that's not the way I work. So I turned it down, which of course made Renny Harlin's career. Absolute madness. Pure speculation on my part, but I theorised this was probably a factor in Bob relenting and giving Harlan the job. By the time of his 5th visit, they must have been so far into production, despite only having a blueprint of a script by the way, that he probably thought, fuck it, we need someone to do it at this point, he'll have to do. And for all the film's flaws that make me not its biggest fan, it's hard to argue that Harlan's vision of how to handle Freddy wasn't the right move for the series. He had realised pretty definitively that at this point, Freddy was the main draw. He was the favourite character, he was the one we all wanted to see. He wanted to make Freddy the James Bond-like icon, of his series, stating, "We've reached a point where the audience sees Freddy as the hero. They come to these movies to hear his funny lines and see him do those amazing things, and because of that popularity, I'm faced with showing Freddy in a more heroic light and giving him more screen time. People will still fear him, but they will also be cheering him on." And at least with this goal in mind, the dude definitely succeeded. Set in 1988, our surviving Dream Warriors, Kristen, Joey and Kincaid, are all out of the psychiatric hospital and have returned to school. Kristen, you'll notice, looks a little different, being that she's not Patricia Arquette, who unfortunately refused to return for the sequel and was instead recast with Tuesday Night. The three remain friends in school from their time fighting Freddy in the hospital, and when Kristen starts having nightmares about the old Elm Street house, she uses her powers to pull Joey and Kincaid into her dream with her. But they ain't buying it and suggest that Freddy is long gone and this is just any other normal bad dream. However, when Kristen is bitten by Kincaid's dog in the dream and all three of the friends wake up, Kristen finds a wound on her arm in real life and Kincaid notices blood in his dog's mouth. Back at school, Kristen has made some new friends and, unfortunately, while functionally fine, they're nowhere near as compelling as the kids of Elm Street 3. They're a bit more two-dimensional and fall slightly more in line with your standard slasher archetypes, which isn't really something Nightmare on Elm Street movies did before this. There's Sheila, the brainy nerd with asthma, Debbie, the cool badass, Kristen's boyfriend Rick, who's kind of like a Xander from Buffy type, full of quips and doggy playfulness, and his younger sister Alice, who's the quiet, mousy type who notably daydreams a lot, often drifting into fantasies of asking out Dan Jordan, the hot boy in school, because as everybody knows, Dans are famously sexy, or telling her alcoholic father to get his act together. Basically, all the things she's too shy to do in real life. One night when Kincaid falls asleep, he finds himself dreaming of the salvage yard where Freddy's bones were buried. And here marks the first point of the movie that absolutely baffles me. Obviously, they find a way to bring back Freddy, because it's a slasher series. You bring back the villain, it's kind of part of the gig. And you can't have a Nightmare movie without him. But how do you think they do it? Lightning? Some ancient curse? A cult resurrection? Nope. Dog piss. Freddy comes back because of dog piss. Fiery dog piss. In a move that has forever confused me. For some reason, Kincaid's dog pisses fire, and this brings Freddy back. I just... what? I know we're in a weird dream here, and like dream logic is strange and stuff, but like, I don't even know what else to say, but why? How do I even begin to question this? It's such an odd creative touch that it's hard to criticize, because you're just like, why did it have to be flaming dog piss? I don't get it. The special effects surrounding his resurrection are pretty rad, but they're not enough to make you forget exactly how he got brought back. But you know what else? The dog piss is not even the worst part of this scene, as immediately afterwards, less than 15 minutes or so into the movie, he kills Kincaid. And then in the immediate following scene, Joey kicks the bucket too. Hate that. Hate everything about that. God, I just despise it when the sequel in a horror film immediately slaughters the previous film's cast. But it's an especially egregious example here. Kristen lasts a little longer, but don't get your hopes up, she'll be out of the picture before the halfway mark as well. Way to undo the narrative victory they had in Dream Warriors, man. God, I'm not saying you can't ever have a recurring cast member die. After all, Dream Warriors killed Nancy, and I was all for that. But don't treat the heroes of your previous story like disposable extras in the next. Make it feel earned at least. Respect your characters, come on. It's so frustrating as so many things do this. You'll see me mention a similar instance later when we cover the Friday movies. It just feels so cheap, so undeserved, so undermining of the last film's efforts. It's like you're punishing your audience for paying attention and sticking around for the franchise. It just sucks, because retroactively now, watching Dream Warriors, their victory doesn't even really feel like a victory at all. At the risk of sounding pretentious, this feels disrespectful to the characters. They earned their happy ending, and now you're taking it away from them. And yeah, sure, the scenes aren't like lazily thrown together or without merit or anything. I like that Kincaid is defiant to the end, and Joey's waterbed death is a rad as hell practical effect. But I don't know, it just really takes the wind out my sails. I get that Freddy has to come back, and that always somewhat undermines their victory in the previous film, since no matter what, as long as there's a sequel, no one can quite kill him. But either give them a reason to be here in the follow-up movie other than as cannon fodder, or just don't write them in at all. They don't need to be there. Yeah, it's nice to have Cass come back to ground the continuation of the narrative, but I can buy that they just won and moved on with their lives, and now Freddy is someone else's problem when he comes back. I mean, you resurrected him with dog piss. It's not even like his return was deeply interwoven with those past characters, is it? This is probably my biggest issue with the movie, and the biggest factor in bringing it down for me. There's other stuff I don't quite vibe with, but this is the only thing I would say I actively really dislike. As the film goes on, Kristen is keeping herself awake, for obvious reasons, when her mother, worried for her daughter's health, puts sleeping pills in her drink. As she falls into the dream world, she recalls some advice that Alice gave her that her dreams were hers to control, and she manages to force herself to have a pleasant dream of relaxing on the beach. The dream, however, is interrupted by Freddy, in an admittedly appealingly goofy moment where he surfaces from the ocean and puts on a pair of sunglasses. Pinning that for now, I got some shit to say about that. Anyway, Kristen is eventually killed in this dream, and I'm not bitter about it. I'm not. It's fine. But not before handing over her dream powers to new leading lady Alice, and the rest of the film is mostly just Freddy picking off the new crew until a final fight with our new final girl. Sheila gets a gross deathly kiss that sucks all the air out of her and in the real world looks like an asthma attack. Rick gets a real awkward low point of fighting an invisible Freddy in a karate dojo, which is a scene that just goes on way too long and doesn't work for me at all. The disembodied Freddy voice he fights neither being entertaining nor scary. It's just a prolonged sequence of a dude in a room by himself swinging wild punches at the air and pretending to get beat up. And no amount of dubbed in Freddy or shots of the glove can convince me otherwise. In the filmmaker's defense, this was a last minute change just because they ran out of money. Originally, there were plans to kill Rick with this crazy, over the top, hugely effects heavy elevator scene, which is where the start of this dream sequence comes from, but they just didn't have the budget to pull off what they wanted. And so, cheesy karate dojo invisible Freddy fight got thrown in there to pad the time and kill the character. And finally, in a real spectacular high point in the movie, Debbie gets turned into a cockroach and smushed, which kinda sounds dumb when I say it like that, but it is handled amazingly with some of the greatest practical effects the entire franchise has seen, featuring some horrendously nightmarish imagery that in lesser hands could have easily looked silly, but here in motion is skin-crawlingly effective. I'm particularly equal parts grossed out by and a fan of the moment where she lifts up from the sticky floor and leaves her jaw behind. So gross. While this is happening as well, we have one of the film's smarter moments going on elsewhere, in a scene that Freddy actor Robert Englund has described as his favourite in the films, where Alice and that hot boy she fancied from the start of the movie, Dan, are trying desperately to reach Debbie and save her before she's killed. And they jump in a car and drive to her, and when we cut back to them, they jump in a car and drive to her, and then when we cut again, they jump in a car and drive to her. There's a really disorienting moment for the audience where it feels like the film glitched and started repeating itself, and that's because it has! In a very surreal and very dreamlike sequence, the characters find they are unable to get to Debbie, as, unbeknownst to them, they are sleeping and in a nightmare of a time loop. It's a really cool concept that genuinely throws off the audience. When I watched this for the first time, I was actually taken aback with a sense of deja vu when the clip played the second time. By the third time I realised what they were doing, and so did the characters, but it's really cool that the film manages to put the viewer into the same sense of confusing disorientation that the characters are experiencing. And again, Sort of like the running and not moving scene that happens in Nightmare 3, this feels very true to dreams. I'm certain I've had this exact sensation in a dream before, where moments feel like they're playing out in a loop, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. In an otherwise mostly silly and MTV-ified movie, this stands out as a real instance of creative psychological horror and using the format of film and audience expectations in a clever way. After this, with all her friends except for love interest Dan dead, Alice decides to take on Freddy once and for all. Fortunately for her, she's not really alone, as the new powers she's had bestowed upon her by Kristen gave her the unconscious ability to also consume her friends' skills and personality traits due to their souls being tied to Freddy's after their deaths, and Kristen's powers momentarily flew through him on their way to Alice, giving them a kind of connection. I think that's what's happening anyway. It's not explained the best, but it's clear that she's picking up their characteristics and abilities, and that's all that matters. So with Kristen's fearlessness, Sheila's smarts, Rick's martial arts, and I guess Debbie's coolness, she battles Freddy in a music video-esque lit and stylized final fight, which is super fun, but unfortunately reaches something of an anticlimax as she defeats him by reciting a rhyme and showing him a mirror? Something about making him see the evil inside of himself. I don't know, it's not really clear and it doesn't quite work for me. And the film ends with Freddy dying for the 4th time, Dan and Alice walking off into the distance, and the credits roll. So yeah, a real mixed bag of a movie for me. There's a lot I like. Alice is great, and I love her arc going from shy mousy daydreamer to kick-ass Freddy Conqueror, and I really like the touch that she's essentially finding that power somewhat in the memories of her friends. I know it's a bit more literal than that, and she's actually legitimately consumed some of their skills and personality through some mumbo jumbo magic, but thematically speaking, it's her friends who help her win the fight and become a more fearless person, and that's cool. Plus, that little bit where she suits up for the fight sequence is just very MTV, very rad, and dare I say, perhaps even also groovy. The stuff with Debbie's dream is amazing. Love the time loop, love the practical effects. The cast, while not as great as Nightmare 3, are pretty solid for the most part. There's no one in here I actively don't like, although I will say Rick can be a little much at times.
For truly the Lord works in mysterious ways.
Hello, baby.
I also really do like just how over the top and frenetic it all is. Consistently great practical effects and a super zeitgeisty of the moment pop cultural style really gives this one its own identity. Unfortunately though, all that good stuff does come with the baggage of an anticlimactic Freddy defeat, a lack of any real character development outside of Alice, less of a narrative focus, and of course, fiery dog piss and quickly killed returning characters. But you know, for all of its flaws, it is absolutely an execution of the vision its director had in mind. And though it's not a vision I always vibe with, it certainly has a goofy, free-spirited and playful energy all its own, and let's not forget, no matter what else it did, it nevertheless gave us Finger Shark Freddy putting on some Ray-Bans and mugging for the camera. And you know what? That's not like an ironic appreciation of that thing, that wasn't a little joke there. I genuinely consider this a big deal. This frame is genuinely so important. I know it's a goofy pic of child-killing bogeyman Freddy Krueger grinning and wearing sunglasses, but hear me out. Firstly, it is the absolute essence of this movie condensed into a single image. If the goal of this film was to make Freddy the hero we cheer for and the James Bond style icon leading the show, then this exact point is where they hit the bullseye. And two, I credit this image as being the absolute moment that cemented Freddy Krueger's turn from cinematic monster to pop cultural rock star. This was that transition's peak. There was a brief period of time in the 80s where Freddy was the coolest man on the planet. It wasn't that this movie was the one to start this trend. Freddy was being marketed as the main attraction as early as Elm Street 2, and Elm Street 3 had already dipped its toes in the waters of MTV-esque rock stardom with its theme song written by rock band Dokken. By the time they were shooting this fourth film, when word got out where they were filming, they'd apparently draw crowds reminiscent of the ones that circulated during Beatlemania, all keen to get a glimpse of the blade-wielding child killer. So it's obvious the Dream Master was not the catalyst to this craze, but it tapped into an energy surrounding how the pop cultural consciousness perceived Freddy at the time and absolutely played into it. When people say this is the MTV nightmare, they really mean it. Not just because it's styled and shot a bit like a music video, but because it has that energy. It's an adrenaline shot into the process of making Freddy into a rock star that didn't just speed up that process, it exploded it. Bob Shea might have been skeptical of the film's direction during the making of, but when they did the test screenings, this film got standing ovations. The reception was so overwhelmingly positive from test audiences that Bob turned around to the director he'd been grimacing at for the past several months and went, "You know what? I think you were right." And Harlan was right. This was the nightmare people wanted. This was a nightmare with its finger well and truly on the pulse. Harlan would later recall in the moments he did pitch things he was doing to Bob, that Bob would look at him baffled and say things like, "So, what, the kids' faces are just gonna be on a pizza? I don't get it." To which Harlan would just reply with, "Yeah, it's gonna be awesome." And Harlan was right. It's maybe not always my kind of awesome, but it was the exact type of awesome the late 80s was defined on. It might not be the perfect nightmare movie for me, but it's hard to suggest it wasn't the perfect nightmare movie for the time. And that's why I think this image, a smiling Freddy in Ray-Ban sunglasses, is just perfect. This image right here was when Freddy truly became a superstar. Maybe at one point he was written as a depraved child molester, and maybe this version of him was still a killer, but it straight up did not matter. The second he put on those shades and smiled for the camera was the moment he became a palatable icon as a slice of true Americana. Cool enough for the kids, safe enough for the parents. I'm not saying this is the very image which made him a megastar like that, but it's the one that solidified it. He might have been a rock star by the release of 3, but this dude can't go on Nickelodeon. But this guy's a cool dude. This guy can rock Nickelodeon. This dude can sell you chewing gum and kids' pajamas and rap albums. He can do in-betweens on MTV and have his own call-in 900 hotline. This, for me, I think was it. The whole film played into this new version of Freddy, but I honestly think this was the game changer. This image is Tom Cruise in Top Gun. It's the embodiment of 80s over-the-top energy. It is pure MTV in a way Freddy had played with for a long time but never fully committed to. This for me was the moment that Freddy defined this transition from popular horror villain to pure pop cultural icon. This was, in my opinion, the hammer meets nail moment, and the blow was right on target. And I can say what I want about the film, but that's got to count for something. And $50 million and a Freddy explosion says it does. And that's Nightmare 4. Not always for me, but definitely for a lot of people back then. And Freddy's saga is far from over. So please do join me again for our next vid when we'll take a look at Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. And if you like this video, let me know with a like or comment with your thoughts. Remember to subscribe to my OnlyDans at the red button below, and if you'd really like to support the channel, then you can do so by becoming a patron at the link in the description and get access to some cool exclusives for your trouble. As always, I've been Dan Drambles, you're watching Wholesome Halloween 2 Slasher Season, and I will see you again tomorrow.